Welcome to A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. My name is Kristen.
And my name is Katie. And we want to spend a few minutes a day with you walking through the New Testament, one chapter at a time. This year, we will fix our gaze upon Christ so that we may know him, not only with our minds, but with our hearts.
Together, we will learn that who Jesus is changes everything. Welcome back. My name is Kristen Schmucker, and if you are new here, we are diving into the entire New Testament, one chapter a day this year. Today, we are in Matthew 14. As always, I'm using the free Behold reading plan and the Behold study guides from the Daily Grace Co., and I'll link those for you in the show notes. Let's dive in. Chapter 14 opens with returning us to the story of John the Baptist. It is interesting to see that Herod heard about Jesus and his ministry and thought that he was John the Baptist raised from the dead. Matthew kind of gives us a flashback of the events that happened surrounding John's death. Herod and his family were known for their wickedness. John had been put in prison because he told Herod of his sin. We then see that Herod had his birthday celebration, and in light of Herod's sinful lifestyle, we shouldn't be surprised that Herodias' daughter is dancing before the king. He was so pleased that he said he would give her anything that she wanted. Her and her mother decided on John the Baptist's head on a platter. I almost don't even know what to say about this passage. It is such a shocking and disturbing story. I think what hits me the most is how this passage shows the self-centered nature of secular culture. A man was killed on such a whim. In this worldview, self is supreme. This story of John begins and ends with Jesus, though. As hard as it is to read this account, it is such a sweet reminder that this is who John was. His whole life was meant to point the world to Jesus, and he did just that. We are told that when Jesus heard the news, that he withdrew to be alone. We aren't told why, but I can't help but wonder if he was grieving his friend and his cousin. Let's not sweep by the humanity of Jesus. Though he is fully God, he is also fully man. He felt the pain of the loss of a friend. But the crowd followed him, and though he wanted to be alone, he saw the crowd, and his heart was filled with compassion. Have you noticed how much we are hearing about the compassion of Jesus? He healed the sick, and when night came, there was no food. Jesus told the disciples to feed them, but there was just 5 loaves and 2 fish. We are told that there are 5,000 men, plus women and children, which likely means a crowd of at least 15,000 people. Jesus took the little that there was, and he commanded the crowd to sit down. It is interesting to see that the Greek word here that is translated as sit down means to recline to eat. This was the posture that would typically be taken at a banquet. So with nothing but a few loaves of bread and 2 fish, Jesus tells the crowd to get ready to be fed and to feast. It is striking to notice that the language of Jesus taking the bread and blessing it is very similar to what we will hear soon at the Last Supper. I wonder if the disciples thought back at this moment when Jesus took the bread that he had blessed and said, "This is my body." Everyone ate and was satisfied. What a picture this is for us, that all who come to him will be satisfied because he satisfies us with himself. I can't help but notice the contrast between the party that Herod held and the feast that Jesus provides. Jesus is a different kind of king. He is a better king who pours out compassion instead of rashness. He gives instead of takes. Instead of looking for satisfaction, he satisfies all who turn to him. Immediately, we are told that Jesus told the disciples to get in a boat and go ahead of him. Jesus stayed to pray. We see here that he prayed for hours late into the night. What an example to us of Jesus' communion with the Father and of his intercession for us. Suddenly, our attention shifts back to the boat. A great storm and strong winds come upon them, and Jesus does the unexpected by walking on the water toward them. While the storms rage around them, Jesus calmly walks toward the boat. The disciples were terrified and worried that they were looking at a ghost. Jesus told them not to fear, to have courage, and he reminded them of who he is. Then we see Peter. Oh, Peter. He has this shaky faith that we can probably all relate to. He asks the Lord if he can come out on the water, but then he takes his eyes off Jesus and he begins to sink. It is a picture of the necessity of keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus, but it is more than that. It teaches us more about who Jesus is. Peter took his eyes off Jesus, but Jesus never took his eyes off of Peter. Though Peter's faith wavered, Jesus never did. We behold Jesus today as the one filled with compassion. He is not just filled with compassion to those around us, but for each of us individually. He sees us. He knows the exact circumstances that you are facing in your life today, and he is compassionate and tender toward you. He is the better king. He is the true bread that satisfies our souls. He is the one who can bring abundance from little. He satisfies us with himself. He is our intercessor who prays for us by name. He is greater than whatever storm we face and has the power to calm the waves around us. He never takes his eyes off of us. No matter how we may falter like Peter, Jesus sees us, he knows us, he loves us, and he will not take his eyes off of us.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. Don't forget to check out the show notes for helpful links and resources related to today's episode. And make sure you are following at Daily Grace Podcast on Instagram for more A Year in the Bible content, and at the Daily Grace Co. for all things Bible study resources. We can't wait to study again with you tomorrow. Bye, friends.